Hello and welcome to this, our first video in the Executive Coaching Series. I'm Harry Petropoulos, one of the founding directors of Red Pill Performance Consultants. Red Pill is an executive coaching firm founded in 2004 with offices in Sydney and Perth. In this introductory video, I'm going to talk about executive coaching and take a look at how the coaching industry has evolved and its current status, particularly in Australia. Interestingly, 15 years ago, when it first started to appear in the Australian corporate scene, executive coaching really seemed to be an extravagant fad that was destined to fizzle out of existence. But unlike most management fads, however, executive coaches in their various guises have now become almost a permanent fixture of the modern Australian organisation. Earlier this year, in fact in July 2014, we celebrated 10 years of operation in the Australian executive coaching industry, and through this video series I'd like to reflect on the last 10 years and share with you some of the insights we've learned, some of the things we've discovered that we do well, and some of the things that we discovered we didn't do that well along the way. I'm going to try to cover topics that will hopefully be of interest to executive coaches who are currently actively coaching in the executive coaching industry, as well as those of you who are perhaps contemplating starting off an executive coaching career. I'm also going to cover topics that will hopefully be helpful to executives who are thinking about engaging a coach perhaps for the first time, and also hopefully these videos will be of interest to purchasers of executive coaching services in larger organisations, typically but not exclusively our HR folk. Over the past 10 years, one thing's for sure, executive coaching seems to have gained enormous popularity, both in the UK and other parts of Europe, the US, and particularly here in Australia. So what's been fueling this growth? Well, undoubtedly, as companies continue to rake over their cost bases with increasingly fine-tooth combs, institutional wisdom continues to be wrung out of organisations. The structures get flatter and flatter, and I'm increasingly seeing competition rather than collaboration becoming the order of the day as executives compete for career progression within their organisations. I also think leadership today is getting more complicated than ever, and in the absence of traditional internal trusted advisor relationships, many executives seem to be turning to independent external counsel. I guess most senior executives that I speak to tell me they prefer coaching over more traditional learning modes because they're able to learn through experience, and they also find the opportunity to have immediate one-on-one feedback quite powerful. In fact, executive coaching is one of the most effective antidotes for what's referred to as CEO's disease. And CEO's disease, I'm referring to the phenomenon where the higher an executive climbs up the corporate ladder, the less candid the feedback about their own performance typically is. In other words, executive coaches are able to help raise their coachees' awareness, and in the process help executives confront the sometimes brutal facts of their current situation. To be effective, leaders sometimes need mirrors to tell them when they're not the fairest of them all. Executives also like coaching because it's often quicker, it's far more intensive and more relevant to them than other modes of development. Coaching is also more discreet than traditional training forums. Many leaders tell me they often feel unsafe, as if every action is being closely scrutinised when they're in the organisation, and they never take the risk of exploring new habits in their role. And where they do try some new stuff, I should say, they often judge their progress far too soon. They curtail experimentation and decrease risk-taking. Coaching seems to work because it's often far safer to try new stuff in a confidential, safe environment than in front of a critical audience, where the risks are sometimes higher. Leadership learning, in fact, works best under conditions where people feel safe, but not so relaxed or safe that they lose the motivation to try harder. So great coaches give leaders room to act and to try new styles, develop and practice new strengths, while maintaining an appropriate amount of pressure to make sure that their motivation is still in tune. So what's your typical executive coach look like these days? Not surprisingly, 15 years of phenomenal growth have attracted many players into the executive coaching market. Sadly, the industry is still quite unregulated. Today, the industry is made up of consultants who've either added coaching to their offering, training companies who either legitimately carve out a coaching offering or, as is more common, rebadge existing training packages as coaching programs. There's also retired or retrenched former executives who've been around the block a few times and who seek to capitalise on the years of experience by offering coaching, and, as is more often the case, mentoring services. And of course, there's psychologists who feel their training in behavioural sciences somehow uniquely equips them as executive coaches. In truth, there's no one standard career path to becoming an executive coach. I happen to be a registered psychologist myself, as are several of my other Red Pill colleagues, but not all Red Pill executive coaches are psychologists. Worldwide, in fact, only around about 5% of executive coaches are in fact psychologists. Now, I don't think you necessarily need to be a psychologist to be an effective executive coach. In my own experience, one of the most effective coaches I've ever come across happened to be a priest. Although you don't necessarily need to be a psychologist to be an effective coach, you do, however, need to be across all aspects of evidence-based coaching theory, communication theory, leadership development, and contemporary adult learning techniques. In addition, while you don't need to be a subject matter expert in the industry to which your coaching client belongs, you do need to have had enough corporate experience to at least be able to speak the same language as your coaching clients. And you also need to be able to recognise and appreciate the complex organisational dynamics in which your coaching clients operate. This is becoming an increasingly important feature of executive coaching, particularly in Australia today. In the current tough business environment, business climate, many senior executives don't feel they're getting enough value out of an executive coach, whether they're a psychologist or not, just talking about behavioural stuff. They want to be able to talk to people who understand their business. In fact, the really effective executive coaching programs tend to go far beyond the traditional softer skills that are typically on offer and tend to intertwine core business expertise with the psychology of change and building sustainability. I'm going to be talking about these topics a little bit later on. So, executive coaching is a growing, albeit unregulated industry. There's no one standard career path to becoming an executive coach, and we know that most senior executives prefer coaching over more traditional training modes. But how do we know that the coaching actually works? Where's the empirical evidence? Although there's plenty of anecdotal evidence around suggesting that executive coaching works in improving executive performance and leadership development, it's hard to quantify a direct return on investment. In more recent times, there have been several encouraging studies into the performance benefits of executive coaching. One of these studies was, in fact, Monash University and University of New South Wales 3-year longitudinal study of around about 100 executives undertaking executive coaching, which was led by Professor James Saros. But this is an exception to the rule. Overall, the research on return on investment of executive coaching programs is still pretty skinny. I'm going to try to put this into better context in an upcoming video and expand upon some of the other studies that have been done in recent times as well. But direct return on investment aside, the market certainly seems to believe that executive coaching is indeed a legitimate and worthwhile endeavour. Although the coaching industry is unregulated, as I said before, and barriers to entry are pretty low, bordering on the non-existent, thankfully in more recent times we're witnessing consumers of coaching services becoming better informed, coaching engagements are getting a bit more refined, and the overall process is being better managed. In more recent years, it's increasingly common practice to have coaching bundled with leadership development programs and introduced as a key element in leadership transitions. In fact, a number of our referrals for coaching work come from recruitment firms in response to their growing exposure to performance guarantees. Although the coaching industry is generally becoming more professional, the industry is still highly fragmented, with the top 5 Australian coaching companies probably representing less than 2% of the total industry by value. But even though industry consolidation is low, executive coaching is gradually maturing into a much more legitimate field. Substantive university-based academic programs are now becoming almost commonplace in graduate schools across the world. In Australia, these programs include the internationally acclaimed Sydney University Coaching Psychology Units program, master's degree, and other programs. University of Wollongong's Graduate Certificate in Business Coaching, Swinburne University of Technology's Graduate Certificate in Organisational Coaching, and Australian College of Applied Psychology's Bachelor of Applied Science, majoring in coaching. A significant, perhaps world-first development in the quest towards the legitimisation of the coaching industry occurred on May the 18th in 2011 when Standards Australia published its handbook called Coaching in Organisations as a precursor to an Australian standard on coaching somewhere down the track. Interestingly, although this handbook espouses some of the benefits of coaching, it still doesn't recognise organisational coaching as a formal profession like, for instance, medicine, law or psychology. Nevertheless, I encourage you to purchase a copy of the handbook by following the link below. Although the growth of the executive coaching industry shows no immediate signs of abating, the industry is not without its detractors. For instance, some critics of the executive coaching movement often accuse the industry of over-intellectualising the coaching process itself in an attempt to exact higher economic rents from the market. This does beg, however, the question. Most enlightened leaders know that at its core, executive coaching simply involves asking a few questions, listening effectively, providing clear feedback, and using a model such as GROW to structure the coaching interaction. We'll talk about GROW in an upcoming video. If this is indeed the case, then what's so difficult about that? And how do the better executive coaches justify charging such ridiculously high fees? Well, hopefully over the next few videos, I'm going to try to attempt to answer this and many other questions in relation to the field. But whether you're a seasoned practicing coach or someone who's looking to forge a career in executive coaching, a current user of coaching services, or someone who's contemplating engaging a coach for perhaps the first time, or a buyer of coaching services, I'm confident there's going to be valuable insights and tips in this video series that will assist you along your coaching journey. Now, like all good executive coaches, feedback is important to me. So if this or any of the other videos in the series pique your interest, please press the like button below. And if you'd like to get this video series streamed directly to you, you can also subscribe to these video feeds below. I'm also keen to handle any questions you might have along the way, so please email me at www.info@redpill.com.au. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you at the next video.